This meeting is being recorded.
All right, well, thank you everyone for attending our November monthly webinar, which will be our last one for the year. We won't be doing one on Boxing Day, even though I'm sure some of you are very keen for that. So look, this has been quite a good series that we've run throughout the year, and it's great to be able to finish on quite an interesting topic. So we've got Scott Greenhow, who's the Executive Director of Freight and Transport for New South Wales, to talk about some of the work that he and his team are doing, in particular looking at the automated access assessment process for councils to improve efficiencies for council processes, but also, I guess, for the freight industry as a whole. So, Scott, I might hand over to you, being mindful of time, but that we will try to allow some time at the end for questions and answers from in the audience as well as we go through. So, Trish, if you wouldn't mind sharing the slides, and yeah, Scott, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Josh, and thanks everybody for giving me the opportunity to have a chat with you today. Hopefully the audio is okay, so please let me know if it's difficult to hear, and I'm just working through the phone, unfortunately.
Can you see my screen now? Can you see the presentation?
No, not yet.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So automated access for heavy vehicles in New South Wales is something that we are working with, of course, IPWIA, Local Government New South Wales, ALGA, a bunch of councils. So we're working with a series of 6 pilot councils and a series of councils through tranche 1 and 2 of the program at the moment. Ultimately, our idea is to get through to everybody in being able to adopt automated access. But there is a national program that's also working feverishly with jurisdictions, National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, Ausroads, of course, the local government associations and local councils as well to get to that point. But let's go through and find out a bit more about automated access for heavy vehicles in New South Wales. If we could go to the next one, it would be great, please. Naturally enough, I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the lands from where we're all dialing in from. I'm in the land of the Darug people in Western Sydney, so I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people on the call today. On to the next one, please. So, the future of freight is now. It is definitely something that when we think about automated access, it feels like it's a little bit of technology witchcraft that belongs in the future. But the reality is, it exists. It is here now. It is working and functioning in Tasmania, and it is something that is an enormous opportunity for us in New South Wales, and needs to be something that we put in place as soon as possible for a variety of reasons. Firstly, the enormous uptick in permit assessments and access requests that are coming through, both for the state road network and local council areas. But it also gives us an opportunity with the variety of types of access requests that are coming in as PBS vehicles start to take off, the ability to be able to make those decisions faster, more reliably, more consistently, and with better outcomes, in that we utilise whatever access is available on our networks without extending beyond the network capability. On to the next slide, please. So demand for safe, sustainable and productive movement of goods is increasing. That is clear. As the task continues to grow, and that means economic activity, then that need it becomes greater. And as we move towards cost of living pressures and trying to alleviate those, then the movement of safe, sustainable, productive movement of goods is critical in that space. And lastly, when we look at from an environmental and sustainability targets, that's going to be a significant move towards being able to use more innovative, more improved vehicles that are new to the task, that are not the type of vehicles that we experience today, and being able to do those assessments quickly and sustainably. As I said, it will be important and critical in this. On to the next one, please. So naturally enough, movement of goods is critical to all of us. We can actually just maybe click through the next couple for these ones to pop up. Thank you. And lastly, on here, you see that movement of goods and how they move is something that is being driven in transport from a policy, data and technology point of view, and automated access is one of those significant opportunities to focus on technology to make sure that we allow the computers to do the bits that they're best at, while the humans in this discussion focus on the bits that we're best at, and that's around the risk elements to it, what's our approach to our asset management, what's our policies towards permitting and expanding and promoting the use of safer, more sustainable, more productive vehicles in our areas, whether they're local road networks or on the state road network. On to the next slide, please. So some of the benefits of adopting technology to improve access. So firstly, there is a lot of work happening in the national automated access system space. So the infrastructure and transport ministers meeting, so that collective made a decision that we would move towards automated access nationally. And automated access, in effect, is the process of taking the performance of the vehicle that's being applied for access and comparing that to the capability of the network. So when you see that next one about leading to reduced administrative costs and burden, at the moment, that's a fully manual process in most locations. But being able to automate that overlay and to confirm whether or not the vehicle performance fits within the capability of the network, that's something that machines are very effective at. Understanding where those settings are as to whether or not it is an appropriate access is still where humans are best at, and that's what the National Automated Access System and automated systems are designed to do, is to compare and involve both of those processes into a system that delivers the better outcomes and maximises the output for people while maximising the use of technology in that process. Increased visibility and knowledge of road assets. One of the things that you need to be able to do automated access is understand the vehicle performance and then understand your network capability. So to understand our network capability, we need to collect that asset data and have it in a form that supports automated access decisions. So by collecting that data, we then have better understanding of what our assets really are and what state they're in through that process, and we can maintain that data set to continue to inform automated access decisions. But that data and the use of the network, so as we permit access under automated access systems, then conditions would be applied around telematics, for instance. And with telematics fitted to as many heavy vehicles as possible, we start to get utilisation data and a much greater understanding of how our network is used by heavy vehicles and the movement of freight. And that means really valuable information for being able to plan investment in the network to make sure it's fit for purpose. So what money do we need to spend and what prioritised order to make the network best fit for the safest, most sustainable, most productive vehicle access. And of course, lastly, there's also insights from that evidence that gives us an understanding of how vehicles use the network. We're then able to make better maintenance decisions, whether it's inspection schedules, whether it's where to spend our money and our budget profiles for our network, or it's about compliance. So how do vehicles use the network and how do we make sure that they're using it appropriately with the vision that we see from the movement of vehicles on those networks. It's a significant step change in access. It really one of the greatest leap forward in heavy vehicle access since the creation of the Heavy Vehicle National Law. All right, on to the next one, please. We might, click through a couple of, thank you. So the automated, excellent, thank you. So the automated access decision process is something that is, from a council point of view in particular, designed to make sure that you have full visibility and understanding of what's happening in your network, and when you're making decisions, they're made with the knowledge of what the vehicle is able to do and what the network is able to do. Whether or not you're involved in every single decision. It is applying your road manager decision methodology and risk appetite for your network. So every decision matches what your process would have done manually. It just does it instantaneously for you. So what that means as road managers, we end up with the role of understanding what our levers are and what our decision-making outcomes would be. And as I said, we allow the machines to do the element that they do best and just compare that data and produce the outcome that we have set the parameters around. So data collected from the pilot councils is used to assist in developing the automated access system. And I mentioned we have 6 pilot councils that we're working with, where we are collecting, either compiling the data that those councils already have on their assets, or that NHVR may have already collected on their assets in the previous versions of the SLGAP program or the Strategic Local Government Asset Assessment Program. So we are either compiling or collecting or collecting. So we're going out to the structures and the assets that we don't have data on for those councils, and we're collecting that data. And all of the data is being stored in the NHVR SLGAP repository, so that it's always accessible via the same channels that you already may have usage of with NHVR and SLGAP. But if you don't have an asset data system, it is also a quasi-asset data system that you can have the information that is required for automated access at least, and it'll give you some insight or some fairly detailed insight of the assets that you have on your road network. As it says there, of course, rapidly compares vehicle characteristics against network capability, saves time and money while increasing quality and consistency of decision making. So really, balloons from the sky, win-win kind of situation, which is a significant opportunity for us, as I said. We go to the next slide, please. All right, so the pilot councils are not listed on here, and those 6 pilot councils are Penrith and Blacktown in Sydney, and Liverpool Plains, Dubbo, Parks and Forbes in effectively Central West. And we've worked quite successfully with the pilot councils in varying degrees of being able to support them. Very much customer focused. So where the councils have asked us to lean in or step back, we've responded to that as well. And this, I can't emphasize enough, this is purely designed to be a peer-to-peer engagement where we do our best to access whatever funding we can to support this as a coordinated approach. So wherever councils may be on their asset data journey, it doesn't matter. We meet you wherever you are. No reflection on whether that might be sophisticated or a little more straightforward. But it is about trying to get all of us ready for automated access from an asset data point of view. But you can see the tranches, tranche 1 and tranche 2 there. It's the 2 different tables of what councils will be in the very near future. So we're starting to work with those councils now and providing sessions that will take them through what that process is and what we expect from councils and how we can sign up and start that engagement. Next slide would be great, please. Ultimately, we want to end up getting to all councils, and we want to end up getting to every asset on all councils, but our primary focus will be on the councils that we've listed. Those councils have been identified through a process where we assessed the number of permits and their exposure to high productivity vehicles, in particular performance-based standards vehicles. And then we are focusing on their 26-metre B-double approved network, because that typically makes up the most valuable freight networks in all of our areas, so whether state road network or local road environments. So that's how we arrived at those councils, and as I said, we only focus on the 26-metre B-double approved network in those councils, but ultimately we want to end up speaking and working with all councils, and then end up working with collecting the asset data for all assets across the entire New South Wales road network. So some of the deliverables for the for the data collection to support automated access, you can see here is the structure of bridge and culverts, the road network geometry, rail level crossings and structures. And to be honest, we do most of our work on those with the rail infrastructure managers, the relevant rail infrastructure managers that have rail level crossings in your areas. We look at the current LGA data storage and assessment system. So whatever data you have available to you, whether it's in your asset management system or whether it's in any format, that whether it's a system or not, or whether it's within the current NHVR/AAAP database, we naturally don't go over ground that has already been covered. But anything that is missing, we then go out to look and collect that data. Recommendations of the pre-assess routes obviously are within that scope as well, around the PBS 2A, which is for level 2 performing vehicles, equivalent to a 26 metre B double, and 2A is at 26 metres. 2B is a vehicle that also performs equivalently to a 26 metre B double, but is up to 30 metres long, and a 3A vehicle performs the same as a Type 1 road train, which are typically 36.5 metre A doubles. On to the next slide, if we could, please. Okay, so our stakeholder engagement approach, as I said, we've invited local councils to participate in the data collection initiative. We would love to have been able to go to everybody first as a collective straight away, but unfortunately, we need to operate within the funding profile that we have available to us while we continue to work to secure more funds. On that, we are working very effectively with the Commonwealth as well to partner with them on funding. And as I said, throughout this process, we have partnered with the NHVR. Ultimately, one of the really key things to remember in that collaboration and engagement is that the entire process is designed to be very customer focused, and that customer is the New South Wales local council. So very open to feedback, very open to making sure that this engagement is fit for purpose for each of the councils. So very open to feedback through this process. And we have worked very significant appreciation to the likes of IPWR and local government New South Wales and ALGA. But I've worked very closely to make sure that this is as fit for purpose as we can get it, but acknowledge that individual councils may still have some preferences on how they'd like to do things, so open to change in that way. As I said, we've been conducting the group briefing sessions, and we also have a memorandum of understanding with participating councils. That's so that you know exactly what you're going to get and what you can rely on, and that the access to that data, which is your data and your data, is always available. So you have that confirmation in writing that NHVR will make that data accessible to you in the format that is most easily digested for you, either by accessing their system or by electronic links that enable that data to transfer backwards and forwards between your asset system if you happen to have one. Next slide, please. All right, questions. Excellent. Hoping that there might be a few questions that people are interested in.
Thanks, Scott. I'll just give people a chance to put any questions they have in the Q&A. This team setup doesn't allow for sort of audio questions, but while that's happening, I might sort of just put to you. You've certainly highlighted, I guess, the benefits to council of this process. In terms of, I guess, getting the message out there, has there been any sort of significant challenges you've come across, or anything that you thought it might be worth sharing to sort of just, yeah,
it's a really good question, Josh. Thank you. It's I think some of the challenges may be, it's fair to say, experience with us as an organisation previously may also present some challenges for councils, because they may have had experiences that were less than savoury for whatever those reasons might have been. So there's that little bit of reluctance that potentially working with a new team and thinking, what is this going to evolve? Is this going to be another thing where I'm told it'll be fantastic and I'll love it, but in reality it's transport focused on transport and just trying to force councils to do things. So very mindful that may have been an experience or something similar for councils in the past. The reason I'm very openly saying that is if you haven't experienced that, then fantastic. But if you have, then we're not going to shy away from that, and we acknowledge that that may have been your experience, and that's why we are very openly saying that we hear feedback and listen to it and act on it. We're very thankful to IPWEA and other associations to partner with, so that councils can also speak to the association if they prefer to provide advice or feedback through that channel. I think also it is heavy vehicles and the road manager function is typically something that most councils, just due to resources and funding, the road manager function is typically something that somebody bolts on to their current role, and they're trying to do that in their spare time, and it can seem like a bit of a dark art, and it feels fraught with danger because communities often complain about heavy vehicles, and we're talking about an automated system that makes decisions faster, and there's a sense that councils might lose control, or they may be concerned about increased access in their networks. What I would like to emphasise for automated access more general, and we're on two paths here, because remember, if nothing else, just having an accurate collection of our data, our assets data in itself, if we do nothing else with it, is going to be an enormous benefit to our current manual process. So I encourage everybody to treat that as a free kick. Like this is an opportunity to get some funding and assistance in being able to collect that. When I say get access to funding, get access to resources that are funded to collect this data. So don't miss that opportunity. With the automated access system, that system is designed to not subvert or take away the local council road manager function or decision-making process. It's designed to support that and be a tool that, no different than if you do some Google Maps Street View analysis of a location because it's too difficult and time consuming to get out to every location when you're making a decision. You may just go and have a bit of a drive of a route or check an intersection from your satellite view or to do your swept path analysis. They're all tools that we rely on in our access decision making. What we're saying is there is an opportunity to be able to make decisions faster, but the same decisions that you would have made in your manual process anyway. Because as you set the parameters for your decision making, then the system responds to that and says yes when you would say yes and says no when you would say no. And what that does, though, is it gives us access to every kilometre of our road network. We can now apply our risk profile and our rationale to access to every kilometre. And we end up accessing all of the available access that we're comfortable with without overstepping that boundary. So if our network, our capability is not able to support access for that particular vehicle, then the system will say no, because it will recognise that as a road manager, we've determined that location isn't appropriate for that vehicle for whatever the reason or rationale is. So very much this is a process that we're underway to say we're road managers no different than all of the 128 councils in New South Wales, and we understand the challenges that a road manager has, and each of those 128 councils have the exact same challenge. So whatever we need, whatever tools we need to be able to do this properly, we recognise that councils need that too. And it's gone are the days that we say, well, that's a council issue to try and solve, because that there is insufficient money or time for everybody to go on that journey and learn those painful processes and try and get that economy of scale on their own. That it just is unachievable. So we've recognised that is an opportunity for us as a jurisdiction to be able to play that leadership role and that coordination and that drive towards a funded economy of scale approach. But we also recognise that New South Wales councils are the owners and operators of 90% of the New South Wales road network. So without New South Wales councils, freight has a very difficult time moving across New South Wales. And that's an opportunity for us to support and help improve council road managers' lives, industry lives, communities, outcomes across the board. So.
And look, I'll pick up on one of your earlier points around, the type of engagement that's happened on this project, and I know that the genesis of this, and this may not be known to all of the attendees, was from a Tasmanian-based system, the HVAP system, and the system down there, I believe, has buy-in from 100% of the councils in that state. And so, that's, I think, a really good example of what can be done, or what can be achieved when the councils and the state governments work together for a good outcome. And I believe there's been some modelling done on the economic benefits to the state as a whole from that sort of process. So I guess put it out there as a bit of an outlier for our members to say, well, that's, I guess, what we're aspirationally working towards in New South Wales as well, is to try and replicate that here. I'll just check. I don't think there's been any questions coming, but one more that has occurred to me. Obviously, with the the second grouping of councils, I presume one of the things you're looking at is sort of cross borders, so across LGA borders, but also potentially eventually into state. So is there sort of consideration for how that's going to work in particular, say with Queensland and Victoria, and what they're doing in this space?
Yeah, another great question, Josh. That national automated access system is a commitment across the country. So each of the jurisdictions have got the expectation to deliver on the NAS and be prepared for the NAS. So the Commonwealth, though, to their credit, has partnered with the NHBR and the jurisdictions to try and support and lean in with funding for that data collection. The jurisdictions are also contributing, and the Commonwealth contributing to the development of a base system. So, as you said, the Tasmanian experience has been really effective, and a really good point to emphasise that every single council in Tasmania has signed up to the Heavy Vehicle Access Management System, or HVAMS, and have done for, I think there was one that dropped out for a short period, maybe 3 or 6 months, something like that. But otherwise, they have all been on board since back to 2019 or so. So Victoria, Queensland, South Australia are all doing their versions to prepare for this. Queensland are probably a little bit more advanced on the system themselves. They're on the precipice of adopting and implementing the oversize over mass version of HVAMS in Queensland, and we're obviously working as a broad collective to trial this and adopt it in a manageable way, so that everybody doesn't have to learn hard lessons through the process. Every time it rolls out, it gets better and easier for the road managers to adopt and for industry to utilise. But we are definitely working with Commonwealth, working with NHBR and each of the jurisdictions to try and collect as much local asset data as possible, and prioritising it potentially in different ways. I can't speak for every state, but our prioritisation approach was around that. Where are the vehicles moving now? Like, who is getting inundated with requests in that order of prioritised volumes, and then focusing on the priority freight network of the 26 metre V doubles, because this is typically around PBS vehicles that are slightly different to the prescriptive vehicles we're used to, but able to achieve enormous leaps forward in safety, sustainability and productivity. But typically, and the biggest challenge often, is how are they going to interact with bridges, because they're designed differently to a B double or an A double, 36.5 metre A double. So it's hard for an asset owner and a road manager to be able to make decisions on all of these different variations of PBS vehicles that are trying to get out on the network and make things better for us as asset owners and communities and as I said, economy and cost of living, etc. Road safety as well, one of the critical things that these are able to achieve. But without being able to assess them accurately for access, then we don't see their uptake happen, because they can't take them anywhere, and road managers are overwhelmed by access requests. And I think New South Wales will will experience something like 35,000 or more permits this year. And that's an enormous leap on what has happened. They've grown exponentially over the last 5 years in particular.
That's a very good point. Look, I guess one final question from me. So, what's, is consideration being given with this project to, I guess, the future state of freight? And I'm thinking here around, say, climate change impacting bridges, also the transition to zero emission heavy vehicles and impacts on, I guess, bridge loading and pavement thickness and things like that. So is that sort of factored in as a part of this project?
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. That's because, and this is our current trap with a manual process. We have a tendency to look at the vehicle that's provided to us. We then go and check the network, and we check whether or not that vehicle can access the network. And that manual process is laborious. But when somebody comes along and says maybe even the same vehicle, just with increased axle masses, for whatever reason that might be, and you gave some really good examples, whether it's zero emission technology that increases tear mass, which then make sure that they're commercially viable and can carry the same payload, and that ultimately increases axle masses. We have to go back through that exact same manual process and check the entire network. And people are asking for, industry are asking for, where, if I need to move to a zero emissions prime mover that's on a general access vehicle, they're now asking us for access over structures that we've probably never considered before, whether or not these things to get across them, because they've only ever been limited to general access vehicles, and general access vehicles are very prescriptive. We know exactly what they look like. So we're looking at networks in a way we haven't had to before. And I think even things like natural disasters are putting enormous pressures on us, where all of a sudden we have a critical route, whether it's a state road or a regional road or connecting roads across local areas, that becomes impacted or degraded or closed altogether. Or immediately we're now scrambling to try and find, well, what are our alternative networks? And that decision making is very hard to make instantaneously. It typically requires us to then go through all of this analysis of, well, we've got to go and look at the bridges on the road. We've got to assess what they're capable of. Then we've got to compare it against every vehicle that may now want to go across there. That is a massive process if it's done manually. But in an automated sense, in an automated world, that data exists. So at the end of this journey, when we've collected all of the asset data, we'll be at a place where we'll be able to say, you can use this road, but these are the conditions that will be required on it. And it will only be available for the 3, 4, 5 weeks or months that it's going to take us to reopen the primary route. And then as soon as we reopen that primary route, then that approval on the other corridor, the alternate corridor, will be removed. And as we're getting access with telematics as conditions, we'll also be able to know what that corridor experienced while it was being made available. So we know what level of maintenance might be required as a result, and we can then have some evidence to support funding, etc., that might be required above and beyond, because it changed its not classification, but it changed the task that it was required to do, and it became a road that it wasn't suited to necessarily designed to do in the first place. So it's the power of knowledge and being able to really make decisions on the fly in a very rapid, agile environment, but in a very consistent, controlled, determined way prior to being in the emergency mode. And that's really flipping the coin on what we do and have done in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. Well, it's good to hear that there's consideration and I guess that forward view of all of those issues as a part of the platform. So yeah, that's fantastic. So there's no more Q&A that's come through, so I know we're a little bit early, but we might wrap it up there and give everyone a little bit of time back in their day. But Scott, thank you so much for coming and presenting today. And I know you've presented at many of our events over the last couple of years, which we certainly very much appreciate. But I think that also sort of stands to the testament about the comment you made about engaging with councils and sort of making yourself available. So we certainly do appreciate that. But no, thank you again for coming to present today.
Absolute pleasure, mate. And it really, this relationship couldn't value more than any other that we experience. So, as I said, I can't remind people enough that if we stand in a room as road managers and councils look after 90% of the road network, then we're the small part of the picture in the room. And as much as possible, we know we're trying to get vehicles from their start or end point to and from the state road network as much as possible, and we all agree with that, and that's our ultimate goal, because that's what the state road network is designed for. But for them to be able to do that entire journey, they can only do that if they're able to start and finish on that local road network. And so you guys are a critical part of that process, and there's not a moment that we don't recognise and realise and value that. So appreciate all of the opportunity that we get to work with yourself, Josh, and the association and councils more broadly. So very happy to hear any feedback that we can do better to improve the outcomes and relationship from a council point of view as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Scott, and look, thank you again. Look to our audience, attendees. This will be, as I said, the last webinar for this year. We'll be looking to reconvene probably towards the end of January. So we'll send out some more information about the next webinar in due course. But thanks again, Scott, and good afternoon, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Well.